The sky above the icy prison was dark, always dark. No sun. No moon, just gray clouds and bitter wind. It was the kind of cold that didn't just sting. It crept into your bones and stayed there. Mason James. A former cargo hauler from Earth stood at the edge of the open steel gate. His breath steamed in the air. His clothes were torn, boots worn thin. He had been dropped here an hour ago, still confused, still angry. Now, a mechanical voice crackled from a rusted speaker overhead. Trial begins. Only one will survive. The night. The gate behind him slammed shut. 12 of them had been thrown into this Sona place the aliens called Zone Frostbite. Each of them different. Some human, some alien, some unrecognizable. But the rule was the same for everyone. Only one could make it out alive. Most were already spreading out, looking for places to hide or to hunt. Mason scanned the area. The terrain looked like a frozen junkyard, scraps of old ships, broken walls, cracked steel, and piles of ice. No trees, no food, no fire. But it was cold, terribly cold. He ducked behind a piece of metal plating and started tearing strips from his own shirt to wrap around his hands. That's when he heard it. A soft sound. A whimper. He turned quickly, fists up. But it wasn't a threat. It was a girl. She was alien, clearly not human. Her skin was smooth and violet, glowing faintly in the dim light. Her eyes were silver and large, like a cat's. She sat huddled behind a cracked engine, arms wrapped around her knees, shivering violently. She wore what looked like a thin slave tunic and no help against the cold. Mason hesitated. He'd seen aliens before. Some were friendly, others not so much. She looked small, young, maybe 18 in human years. Still, this wasn't a place for kindness. He turned away. Please. A faint voice whispered behind him. He stopped, looked back. The girl had lifted her head. Warmth. She said again, please. I don't want to die cold. Her voice wasn't threatening. It was tired, broken. Mason cursed under his breath. This wasn't his problem. They'd all been told. Kill or die. But something in her voice, it reminded him of his little sister, back on Earth. Before the war, before the bombings. When family still meant something. He turned back, knelt beside her. You got a name? He asked quietly. She blinked slowly. Leora, I'm Mason, he said, removing one layer of his jacket and wrapping it around her shoulders. This isn't smart, but I don't like leaving people to freeze. She flinched when he touched her, as if she expected him to strike her. Easy, he said, voice calm. Not here to hurt you. Leora looked at him with wide, confused eyes. Why? We're enemies, aren't we? Mason sighed. Not tonight. They stayed hidden behind the metal engine, the wind howling around them. Other sounds echoed across the frozen landscape, screams, growls, blaster fire. Someone was already fighting. Someone else. Dying. Mason lit a small spark with 2 wires he pulled from the wreckage. Not much, but it gave a bit of heat. He and Leora leaned close, both shaking. I wasn't supposed to be in the trials, she whispered. I was just property. Said I wasn't worth feeding. Mason clenched his jaw. Yeah, well, welcome to the universe. A loud bang echoed nearby. Someone had been thrown against a wall. Heavy footsteps passed by. Mason tightened his grip on the wire coil, ready to fight. But the steps faded. They were safe. For now, Leora moved closer. Her head touched his shoulder. He could feel her tremble, even through the jacket. I don't want to kill anyone, she whispered. Me neither, he replied. She looked up at him, voice barely audible. Do you think ... there's a way both of us can live? Mason didn't answer. He didn't want to lie to her. She took that as silence. She nodded slowly. Then, if only one must live, it should be you. What? She leaned forward, pulling her only blanket off her shoulders and wrapping it around him instead. You gave me warmth, she said, her voice breaking. You reminded me what kindness feels like. Mason grabbed the blanket and forced it back onto her shoulders. No, don't do that. She smiled softly, weakly. Too late. I already did. He didn't know what to say, but in that moment, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a game. It wasn't just survival. This was a test of what it meant to still be human, and she, an alien, had just passed it better than most. And somewhere in the shadows, a hidden drone recorded every word, every action, silently watching. The second night came faster than Mason expected. There was no sun to track to only the sound of a metal siren echoing through the ice canyon, followed by the mechanical voice. Nightfall, 11 subjects remain. 1 survivor. Permitted. The words chilled his spine more than the cold. He and Leora stayed huddled behind the wrecked engine. The tiny fire had died hours ago. He'd torn more fabric from the inside of his boots and wrapped it around her arms. She was still shaking, but her breathing had steadied. I think my heart stopped a few times, she murmured, her silver eyes flickering with exhaustion. Then started again because you were warm. Mason looked at her. She was trying to smile, but it was forced, like she was too weak for real emotion. You need rest, he said. I'm afraid to sleep, she replied. Last time I did, I woke up in a cage. He didn't press further. He knew what cages did to people, land to aliens like her. Silence sat heavy between them. Then Mason asked, "Why did they throw you in here? You said you were property." Nodded. I was a gift, given to a rich warlord. He didn't want me, sent me to the trials instead. Mason clenched his fists. That's sick. She turned to him, blinking slowly. Your people didn't do things like that. Mason hesitated. We did, in history books, but not anymore, or at least not openly. A loud scream tore through the air. Close. Someone was dying. Leora flinched and curled closer to Mason, instinctively pressing her cheek against his chest. He didn't move. Let her stay there. He could feel how fragile she was, like a bird with hollow bones, and yet she was still alive, still trying. You said your name is Mason, she whispered. What did you do? Before this, I hauled scrap. Old starship. Junk, got paid just enough to eat and sleep, but I loved it. I was free. She tilted her head. Free? What does that feel like? Like having choices? She nodded slowly, almost like she was pretending to understand. The cold pressed harder. Mason knew they couldn't survive another night like this. His body was strong, but Leora wasn't made for this kind of planet. Suddenly, she winced. What is it? He asked. My back. It burns. He pulled the cloak off her slowly and saw it. A deep bruise along her spine. Black veins crawling out from it. Some kind of implant had been forcibly removed. Mason sucked in a sharp breath. What did they do to you? Leora looked away. I think they took something from me. Something important. You need real help, he said. A medic, a warm bed, food. She gave a weak laugh. Sounds like heaven. A gun going to get us out of here, Mason said. He didn't know how, but saying it made it feel real. She looked at him, eyes soft. You'd risk your life for someone like me, someone like you. A mistake, a tool, a slave. Mason leaned closer, holding her hands tightly in his. No, not anymore. You're someone now. Her lips trembled. She didn't say anything. just let out a long breath and rested her forehead against his shoulder, for the first time in who knew how long. She felt safe, and that terrified her. Hours passed. They stayed close, barely moving. The wind died down, but the temperature didn't. Rise suddenly dashed footsteps. Mason froze. Crunch, crunch. Someone was approaching slow. Careful. He peeked over the wreckage. A bulky figure, wrapped in thick armor. Scanned the area with a glowing red visor. Leora saw it too, and whispered, "That's a hunter. They kill quietly." Mason gritted his teeth. He didn't have a weapon, just 2 wires and a broken pipe. The hunter stopped. Turned. Mason ducked. The footsteps came closer, too close. He grabbed the pipe and handed the cloak to Leora. "Hide under this. Don't move. What about you? I'll distract him. Buy time." "No, Mason." But he was already gone. He crept around the back of the wreckage and stepped into the open. "Hey," he shouted. The hunter turned instantly, raising a blade. Mason didn't wait. He ran fast, leading the hunter away from Leora's hiding spot. The hunter chased him. Mason dodged through twisted wreckage, ducking and weaving. He leaped over a beam, then slipped on the ice and crashed hard onto his shoulder. The hunter stood over him, blade rising. Just as the blade came down, crack. A burst of static and light exploded behind the hunter's helmet. He staggered. Mason looked up. Liora stood there, holding the broken power coil from the fire. Its charge had discharged right into the hunter's head. The figure dropped, smoke rose. Leora fell to her knees, trembling. "You were supposed to run," Mason said, stunned. "So were you," she whispered. They looked at each other, and then without words, they hugged. Shaking from cold, fear, and something else neither of them understood yet, but they were still alive. Together. The sky roared. Mason and Leora looked up just as the clouds above split with lightning. But it wasn't natural, it was artificial. It flashed in a perfect pattern, like a signal. Suddenly, the voice returned. Cold, robotic. New trial initiated. Hunters neutralized. Activating apex threats. Ice wolves. Mason narrowed his eyes. What the hell are ice wolves? Leora's face lost all color. They're not wolves, they're machines. With teeth? They both stood slowly. The body of the armored hunter lay still behind them, his helmet smoking. The kill hadn't made Mason proud, made him scared. If this was just the beginning, what was next? Leora's grip on his arm tightened. They'll smell heat, movement, even emotion. If you panic, they come. How do we fight something like that? Mason asked, scanning the wreckage for anything useful. We don't, we run. A sharp, high-pitched howl tore through the wind. It didn't sound like a creature. It sounded like metal screaming. Mason grabbed the broken pipe again, then turned. To Leora, let's move. They ran out the wreckage. Field ended after a mile beyond, it lay a frozen valley. Black rock and white snow stretched for miles. No trees, no buildings, no shelter. But halfway across the valley, they saw it. A tower. It stood tall, barely stable, with strange markings glowing blue across its surface. A generator station. Leora gasped. If we can reach it, maybe there's power, heat, a signal. The howling came again, this time closer, and then they saw them at the edge of the valley. 4 shapes moved, long 4-legged machines. Like wolves made of jagged steel. Their eyes burned orange. Their claws dug into ice like it was paper, and they were fast. Go. Mason shouted, grabbing Leora's hand. They sprinted across the snow. The wind stung their faces, but they didn't. Stop! Behind them, the ice wolves ran. No. Hunted. Smooth. Silent. Ruthless Mason could hear the claws clicking on the ice. "I see a vent tunnel," Leora yelled, pointing ahead. Sure enough, a half-buried pipe stuck out from the snow like a broken bone. They dove inside just as the first wolf pounced, its claws scraping metal inches behind Mason's boot. Darkness swallowed them. The tunnel was tight, cold, damp. Leora's hands glowed faintly in the dark, casting pale violet light. "Keep quiet," she whispered. "If they hear us, they'll dig through." They crawled. Minutes passed like hours. Mason's knees ached. His breath came in silent gasps. "I hate small spaces," he muttered. Leora gave a weak smile. "At least it's warmer in here." Then thud, something hit the pipe from outside. Then again, claws stout scraping. Tearing, Mason froze. The pipe shook. A snarl echoed inside. "They're tracking us," Leora said. "They know we're inside." Mason looked ahead. A metal hatch blocked the end of the pipe. "We can't go back." "Then break it," she whispered. "Fast." He moved forward, lifted his pipe, and slammed it against the hatch once. Twice. The third time, clang. It popped open, and cold wind blasted in. They scrambled out, falling into what looked like a broken basement of the generator tower. But it wasn't empty. Mason's foot kicked. A something. A body. A human. Frozen solid, mouth open in a silent scream. "Don't look," Mason said quickly, pushing Leora behind him. The room was scattered with old tech tools, panels, torn wires. A broken heating core blinked red. "Can we fix it?" Mason asked. Liora knelt beside the core. Her fingers glowed faintly as she touched it. I think I can restart a burst cycle, but it'll drain me." "Drain you? My species can share energy. It's how we power living ships." Mason stared at her. "You're amazing." She looked down, embarrassed. But before she could speak crash above. One of the wolves had leaped onto the roof. Its claws tore through steel. Leora began to chant softly, like a melody. Her fingers glowed brighter. The heater sparked, buzzed. Boom. A pulse of warmth spread through the room like a wave. It wasn't fire, but it was enough. The cold faded. Mason stepped in front of her. "It's coming. Get behind me." "No," she said weakly, shaking. "If I stop now, the heat will fail." "You must hold it off." He looked at hurt, trembling, scared, glowing like a dying star, nodded. The ceiling broke open. The ice wolf dropped down. It roared a sound like metal. Ripping End lunged at him. Mason met it with the pipe, jamming it straight into its eye. Sparks flew. It howled, but it didn't stop. It threw him back against the wall. His ribs cracked, blood in his mouth. Leora screamed, but didn't move. She kept chanting, glowing brighter. The wolf turned toward her. Mason saw it, knew what would happen. He stood, stumbled forward. "Hey," he yelled. The wolf turned just as Mason hurled a piece of rebar into its leg. It twisted, enough time. The heating core surged. Boom. A shockwave of heat blasted outward, frying the wolf's circuits instantly. The creature dropped, twitching. Silence. Lior, a collapse. Mason caught her. She looked up, barely conscious. "Did we make it?" He nodded. "We're alive." She smiled, barely. Then whispered, "Then, stay close. I'm cold again." He pulled her close. They sat in the warmth, surrounded by wreckage and death, holding on to the only warmth left in the galaxy, each other. Mason woke up to the sound of dripping water. Warm air touched his skin, a strange feeling after days of freezing. He blinked slowly and found Leora curled up beside him, sleeping peacefully. Her violet skin shimmered faintly under the glow of the active heat core. He smiled weakly. She was alive. They had made it through the night. But now, it's a real question. Was how long would this warmth last? The fire chamber wasn't much. It had rusted walls, half-melted pipes, and black burn marks across the ceiling. But the core was still humming. Leora had sacrificed her energy to wake it up, and now they were safe for the moment. Mason looked at the lifeless ice wolf lying nearby. Its metal body was scorched, wires hanging loose. It wouldn't be hunting again. He turned back to Leora, brushing snow dust from her cheek. She stirred. "You're awake," she whispered, her voice dry. "You've saved us again," he said softly. Leora blinked slowly. "I didn't think I could." "Well," Mason shrugged. "Next time you think you can't, just remember this moment." She gave him a tired smile, but it faded quickly. "I feel weak," she admitted. "Too much energy lost." He nodded. "You need food. Real rest." She closed her eyes. "I haven't eaten in 3 days. Then I'll find something." He said 10 minutes later. Mason returned with a few emergency rations he found stashed in a rusted cabinet. Military issued, probably centuries old, but still sealed. Leora looked at it with hesitation. "It's not alive, is it?" He laughed. "No, it's just terrible human food." She sniffed it, wrinkled her nose, but took a bite, then another, and another. Within minutes, she had finished the pack and leaned back, eyes closed. "That was the worst thing I've ever eaten," she said. "But I loved it." Mason chuckled. "Welcome to human survival kits." As they rested, the ceiling. Lights flickered. A sudden buzzing sound filled the room. Then the voice returned. 2 survivors detected. Protocol breach. Termination pending. Mason stood up fast. "What?" Leora looked around, panic rising. "They know we didn't kill each other." A red light blinked above the door. A mechanical lock clicked open. From the wall, a panel slid aside and a new passage appeared. Heat leaked from the dark tunnel. "Do we go?" Mason asked. Leora stood, shaky but determined. "If we stay, they'll come. If we move, we might escape." Mason helped her up. "Then, let's move." The tunnel led them into a circular chamber, warmer than before. The walls glowed with soft orange light. Strange symbols danced across the ceiling. It felt ancient. Like this place had existed long before the death games began. In the center of the room stood a single device, a tall pod like a sleeping capsule. Lights pulsed along its sides. A glowing text hovered above it in alien script. "What does it say?" Mason asked. Leora frowned. "One survivor, one rest chamber, one path to freedom." Mason felt his stomach twist. "It's a choice, isn't it?" She nodded slowly. "Only one of us can use it." Silence. The warmth of the chamber suddenly felt like fire against his skin. Leora stepped back. "You take it?" "No." "You're stronger." "No." She lowered her head. "I'm not built to survive, Mason. You are." He clenched his fists. "We've come this far together. We stay together." She looked at him with glassy eyes. "You showed me kindness in a place meant to kill. That's more than I ever had." Tears welled up in her silver eyes. "I was just a test subject, Mason, a failed hybrid. I wasn't even given a real name until I escaped. You gave me warmth. Not just body warmth, but something deeper." He stepped forward, touched her cheek. "Don't say that," he whispered. "You're more human than most humans I've met." She let out a shaky breath. And then, slowly, she reached up and hugged him. It was the first time she had initiated a hug, not out of fear or desperation, but trust. They stood there in Silence in the center of the fire chamber as the system above kept repeating. Only one may proceed. Only one may live. Leora pulled back and looked at the pod. Then she reached into her tunic and pulled out a tiny disc no bigger than a coin. What's that? Hope, she whispered. She pressed it into the pod's side. The machine beeped. The alien script changed. Override accepted. Dual route initiated. Warning, unstable. Mason's eyes widened. Wait, what did you do? I lied. She whispered weakly. I was made for something. They called it fusion key technology. My energy signature can unlock systems that respond only to hybrids. You risked it again. For me, for us, she said. Now we both have a chance. The pod split in two smaller seats extended barely big enough for one each. Get in, she said, collapsing slightly. Mason rushed to hold her steady. You're freezing again. She laughed faintly. That's just my natural state. They climbed in. The pod sealed above them. The system groaned. A countdown began, and somewhere in the distance, alarms began to blare. The fire chamber was collapsing, but inside the pod, lives held on to each other and refused to let go. The pod shot forward like a bullet, shaking violently. Mason held tight to the harness. Leora, beside him, kept her eyes closed, her hands glowing faintly as the pod systems fed off her energy. The narrow chamber around them lit up with red warning signs. Emergency protocol triggered. Breach of trial rules. External override detected. Guess they're not happy we cheated death, Mason muttered. Leora forced a weak smile. It was never about surviving. It was about breaking us. Then, the pod slammed to a stop. Doors hissed open. Light flooded in. They stepped out into a massive white room. Too clean. Too quiet. No cold, no chaos. Just rows of glass walls, and behind each one, observers, dozens of alien officials stood behind thick, transparent screens staring at them. Some had wide, insect-like eyes. Others wore breathing masks or floated in hover chairs. One thing united them all. They were watching, and in the center of the room stood a tall figure. Humanoid, cloaked in black. His face was hidden by a silver mask. Welcome to Phase 2, the masked figure said. Mason raised his fists. Who the hell are you? The figure tilted his head. I am the architect. I designed the trials. You mean the death games? Ah, the architect said calmly. To you, perhaps. But to us, this is selection, evolution, purpose. Leora stepped forward, her voice soft but sharp. You threw me in like trash. You were never trash, the architect replied. You were a seed. We wanted to see if you would bloom. Mason clenched his jaw. You tortured her. We observed her, the figure corrected. And you, human. You impressed us. Is that what this was? Mason shouted. Some twisted science fair. The architect stepped closer. You broke the rule. You gave warmth instead of taking life. You shared instead of surviving alone. That was unexpected. Mason stepped between Leora and the figure. Why are we here? Why not just kill us? Because, the architect said, voice lowering, you've passed. A door behind him opened. Two guards entered. Between them stood a pale woman in red robes, her face marked with blue tattoos. The representative of the council. The architect said, she will decide your fate. The woman looked at Mason, then at Leora. Then she spoke. Subject, Mason. Subject, Leora. You are both anomalies. The trials were designed to test individual strength, not cooperation. Mason folded his arms. Guess we broke your test. she continued. Some on the council wish to study you further. Others believe you are a threat. What about you? Leora asked. The woman paused. I believe in balance, but I also believe in truth. And there's something you need to see. She turned, waved her hand across the screen. A hologram appeared. Mason stared. It was Earth, but it wasn't Earth as he remembered it. Skies burned. Cities. Crumbled ships exploded in orbit. Is that now? He asked. The woman nodded. Your world is under siege. Not by US, but by those who profit from chaos. Pirates, warlords, traitors of death. Your people are falling. Mason's heart dropped. His world was dying and he was stuck in this nightmare arena. The woman continued. You have a choice. Go back to Earth and fight with what's left, or stay and join us. Join you, Leora said quietly. You showed something the council hasn't seen in years, the woman replied. Compassion, defiance, connection. Traits of leadership. Traits of danger. Mason stepped forward. I'm not joining anything until I know you're not behind Earth's fall. We are watchers, she replied, not destroyers. Silence, then. Leora spoke. I don't care about your tests, or your council, or your machines. I care about him, she said, pointing to Mason. I was bred to follow, trained to submit. But he didn't let me. He showed me how to stand. The woman looked at them both, then nodded. Very well. She handed Mason a small object, a silver ring, not for decoration, but a key. It will open a ship, she said. One designed for two. You can return to Earth, or leave this system entirely. But once you choose, the path cannot be changed. Why give us a choice? Mason asked. Because the architect said, stepping forward again, we want to see what humans do with freedom. Leora looked at the ring, then at Mason. He looked back at her, and without saying a word. They both knew what they wanted. They would fight together, for Earth, for the broken, for those left behind in cages. Like the one Leora escaped as they left the White Room. Alarms buzzed faintly in the distance. Something was wrong again, but this time they were ready together. The corridors outside the White Chamber weren't silent anymore. Red lights flashed, sirens screamed, and the robotic voice returned, this time louder. Unauthorized decision detected. Lockdown initiated. Purge protocols activated. Mason and Leora ran. The silver ring, cold and smooth, was gripped tightly in Mason's palm as they dashed through the polished metal halls. Behind them, the architect shouted for containment, but the councilwoman stayed silent. Maybe she agreed. Maybe she was stalling. Either way, they had a head start. This was too easy, Mason muttered. I was thinking the same, Leora said, panting. They don't give choices, they give illusions. Around the corner, a black door stood waiting. Symbols glowed faintly around its rim, the same ones that pulsed on the ring. This is it. Leora said, use the key. Mason held the ring up to the scanner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then clicks, the door hissed open. What they saw inside made them both stop. The ship was small, sleek, silver, and humming softly with life. But it wasn't designed by humans. It was alive. Vines of glowing metal twisted through the interior walls. The cockpit was shaped like an open flower. The seats adjusted the moment. Mason and Leora stepped in, responding to their weight. Pulse, even breathing. It's a living hybrid ship, Leora whispered in awe. Organic alloy. My species used to build these before the wars. Mason slid into the pilot seat. It molded around his body like water. How do we fly it? She sat beside him. It reads intent. Focus your thoughts. He looked at her, seriously. Nodded. Think of where we need to go. Earth. He closed his eyes, focused, home. Earth, blue skies, burning cities, family war. The ship responded. The walls pulsed blue. Ah! Low hum vibrated through the deck as the engine woke up like a sleeping beast, then security breach. Launch bay locked, vessel override disabled. They both looked up. The exit gate above remained shut tight. We're trapped, Mason said. No, Leora replied, her voice low. Not yet. She stood, raised her hands. Her fingers glowed more intensely than ever. The ship responded to her energy. Panels shifted. Vines moved. Suddenly, a hidden terminal rose from the floor, live with ancient code. This ship was made by my kind, she said. It listens to me. She connected her fingers to the terminal. Her entire body lit up like starlight. Her skin shimmered. Her eyes glowed white. Mason watched in awe and fear. Leora, how much power are you using? Too much, she whispered. But I'll get us out. The bay shook. A blast door exploded open behind them. Security bots rolled in hovering spheres with razor arms and blasters. Mason grabbed a panel and ripped it loose, holding it like a shield. Leora cried out as the ship screamed with Hertha. Engines surged and the launch bay ceiling cracked. Then, the Rortha roof split open, sky, real sky, stars. Above, the ship rose. Bullets flew past them. One grazed Mason's arm. He winced, but didn't drop his makeshift shield. Leora, come on. She collapsed into the seat beside him, pale and shaking. Fly now. The ship obeyed with a flash of light and a shock wave of force. The vessel blasted up into the stars, leaving behind fire, chaos, and a system that had failed to cage them. Hours passed. Space stretched ahead of them, black and quiet. Leora lay curled beside him in the co-pilot seat, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Mason sat still, eyes fixed on the stars. Her head slowly rolled onto his shoulder. You? Okay, he whispered. I feel empty, she said. I poured myself into the ship. You did? She nodded weakly. Worth it? Mason checked the ship's map. Earth was still far, but reachable. The engines were strong, too strong for such a small ship. He looked at the design again. Symbols matched the ones on the trial. Arena. And something clicked. They never planned to let anyone leave, he said softly. This ship, it was the real test. Leora looked up. What do you mean? It wasn't about surviving the cold, or killing, or trials. It was about finding someone who could wake this ship. Her breath caught. They needed someone with your blood, and someone with my heart. She blinked. So we're keys. He looked at her and smiled. No, we're the lock and the key. She gave a tired laugh, very poetic, human. They sat in silence again. Then Mason said, when we get to Earth, it won't be safe. You sure you want to come with me? Leora closed her eyes and leaned closer. I've been cold my whole life, she whispered. You're the only warmth I've ever known. Mason placed his hand gently over hers. The stars outside moved, but inside, the ship was quiet, peaceful. Moment of calm before the storm, Earth came into view slowly. From the black of space, it looked beautiful. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds swirling above the spinning planet. But beauty could lie, because even from orbit, Mason could see the scars. Smoke drifted across continents. A large city was burning. Ships sold. Rusty human ships were fighting strange, sharp alien craft in the upper atmosphere. Leora stared at the sight, her silver eyes wide. This is your home? She asked softly. It was, Mason said. It's a battlefield. Their small living ship moved closer, staying hidden among space debris. The organic panels of the hull adjusted, darkening to avoid sensors. Mason tapped the controls. "We'll need to land far from the cities, somewhere safe." "There's no such thing anymore," Leora said. "Not for people like us." He looked at her. "Then we make it safe." They landed in the ruins of an old satellite station, deep in a forest valley. The trees were blackened from past fires. The building was broken, but the underground levels were still usable. It was quiet, no signs of patrols. No drones, just broken earth. As Mason helped Leora down the ramp, he felt it gravity. Earth's gravity. He hadn't felt it in months. "I never thought I'd feel grass again," he said, stepping onto dry moss. Liora looked up at the sky. "It's beautiful. For now." Inside the station, they powered up the remaining systems. The ship connected to the tech easily, spreading like roots into the computer core. A hologram of Earth's war zones blinked into life. Red markers everywhere. Civilian zones had been overrun. Pirate lords had taken orbital stations. Alien mercenaries sold captured humans like cargo. Resistance cells were scattered, broken. Leora touched the map. "They've taken your planet." Mason stared at the glowing red lines. "They think we're weak," he said. "But they haven't met us yet." Over the next few days, they worked. In silence and fire, Mason built makeshift weapons using old Earth tech fused with the alien energy cores inside the ship. Grenades, stun blasters, EMP charges. Leora recovered fast, her energy returning now that she was off that frozen moon. She practiced with the ship's neural controls, learning to bend the ship's skin, aim its organic cannons, even cloak it fully. But she also did something Mason didn't expect. She sent a signal. "To who?" he asked. "To others like me," she said. "The ones who escaped. The ones still hiding in shadows. They deserve to know we're fighting." Mason looked at her with pride. "You're not just surviving anymore. You're leading." She smiled. "I learned from someone good." On the 7th day, a reply came. One voice, one message, one name. Mason James. "Is that really you?" "This is Sergeant Kira Devons. Earth Resistance. Coordinates incoming." Mason's eyes widened. "Kira's alive? Who is she?" Leora asked gently. "My old squad leader," Mason said. "She saved my life during the first invasion. We lost contact when the stations fell." Leora stepped beside him. "Then it's time to bring people back together." The ship lifted again, cloaked and silent. They traveled low, skimming across scorched mountains and burnt cities. From above, they saw bodies, slaves, camps, factories filled with humans and aliens alike. Chained and forgotten. Mason's grip on the controls tightened. "This ends," he growled. "All of it." Leora said nothing, but her eyes burned like twin stars. When they reached the coordinates, they found a hidden bunker beneath a cracked highway. Dozens of people waited inside, dirty, tired, and armed. Humans, aliens, even children. And in the middle of it, all Kira, tall, tough scars across her cheek. But when she saw Mason, she dropped her rifle and ran to hug him. "You idiot," she whispered. "You're supposed to be dead." Missed. "Me too, huh?" He smiled. Kira looked past him at Leora. "That her?" Mason nodded. "She saved me. More than once." Leora lowered her head shyly. Kira approached her. "You're one of the hybrids." "Yes," Leora said. "But I'm not with them. I'm with him." Kira studied her a moment, then nodded. "Then you're with us." That night, around a small fire, Mason told their story. The cold moon, the trials, the betrayal, the escape, and the ship, the living ship that now waited above in camouflage. The survivors listened. And something changed. Hope, real hope. A fire sparked in tired eyes. A week later, the first strike began. Mason and Leora flew overhead, their ship cloaked. Kira and her team moved on foot. Guided by Leora's map and tech, the target, A. Slaver station deep in the mountains. They hit hard. EMP blasts fried sensors. Mason dropped from the ship, rifle in hand, leading the charge. Leora stayed above, disabling auto turrets and opening locked gates. With a flick of her glowing hands, it wasn't a long battle. It was a message. And when the station burned, the survivors inside cried and screamed, not in fear, but in freedom. That was only the beginning. From the shadows, a new force rose. Not an army, not a rebellion. Something more dangerous. A bond. A human who gave warmth in the coldest night. An alien girl who believed she had no worth, but became something more. Together, they weren't just survivors. They were the spark of a galaxy on fire. And the warmth they shared became the flame that would burn empires down.